It took just a couple of seconds, the pilot said. I remember looking up through the ceiling and I saw a white flying light moving atop us. It followed to the left horizon where it just disappeared. Welcome to the Paranormal Post. I'm Clayton Morris. When you think of October, you likely think of Halloween. You think of the overall scary vibe that it has. Of course, you'll also think of trick-or-treating. Well, in the year 1973, the Earth seemed to be a hotspot for aliens trick-or-treating on Earth. That's the only explanation as to why all of these sightings have been recorded within a few weeks of each other. Today, we'll be talking about the massive UFO invasion that happened in the United States throughout October of 1973. And I want to start out in Ohio. Almost 40 years ago, strange things were happening in the skies over north-central Ohio. A close encounter in Mansfield that has since become known as the Coin Incident is still raising eyebrows among believers and UFO investigators. That evening, in a soybean field in the west side of Galion, Renee Boucher and her brother Brad saw a bright light in the sky. And then, a short distance away, around 11 p.m. on October 18, 1973, an Army Reserve helicopter came perilously close to colliding with an unidentified flying object. Rick Jesse, who now lives in Cincinnati, was flying the Huey helicopter that night. 3 decades later, he still is not sure what happened. Jesse was one of 4 members of an Army Reserve unit based at Hopkins Airport in Cleveland. Now, the crew was en route to Cleveland from Columbus, Ohio. Jesse said, quote, "Captain Larry Coyne was the pilot. I was in the left seat, actually flying the Huey helicopter at the time. We were near Mansfield, Ohio, flying at 2,500 to 3,000 feet. Now, John Healy and Robert Yanisek were in the back of the Huey. They were near a cargo door that had a plexiglass window. Now, Jesse says, quote, "One of the guys in the back reported a huge red light. He said it looked like an aircraft light on the right horizon, but Jesse himself couldn't see it." Jesse was flying from the left seat of the aircraft. On the other side of the Huey, there was a 12-foot section of fuselage between the side window and the cargo doors. He figures the red light was in a blind spot. He couldn't see it. Then he heard yelling, saying, "I think it's coming towards us," Jesse said. "The next thing I knew, Larry took control of the throttle. We went into a maneuver, a controlled free fall. We dropped 2,000 feet. Jesse said if Coyne had not made the drastic maneuver, there would have been a collision. "It took just a couple of seconds," Jesse said. "I remember looking up through the ceiling and I saw a white light moving over top of us. I followed to the left horizon where it just disappeared." Jesse isn't sure what he saw. It was like no aircraft he'd ever seen before. He guessed it was traveling at least 500 knots, twice the speed of his Huey. He said red navigational lights aren't located in the front of an aircraft, so that's when he said he noticed it was moving towards us and he doesn't know what it was. The incident was documented by witnesses on the ground at the time, in the soybean fields. In UFO lore, the Coin Incident is regarded as one of the most reliable UFO sightings of all time. Jesse said, "It caused a lot of hullabaloo. The first thing I thought was, those damn commie bastards. What are they up to?" he said. The next morning, 2 of the other crew members, while being questioned about the incident, sketched drawings of the identical thing they saw, cigar-shaped craft, and they drew them separately from one another. They both came up with a similar drawing, Jesse said. The magnetic compass in the Huey then never worked again after the incident. It had to be replaced. Renee Bouchard doesn't know what she saw in Galion about 60 minutes earlier that same evening in the soybean fields. She says, "I was in high school. My brother was in junior high. There had been a lot of sightings in the days and weeks before that. Even the governor reported seeing something, and she said, we thought we would give it a try. Go out into the fields and see if we could find anything." She and her brother walked out in the soybean field behind their home and started watching the sky. She says, "We saw a bunch of stuff that looked like it was maybe 30,000 feet in the air, but it wasn't anything spectacular. Airplanes, probably. Then I think we both put our heads down for some reason. That's when we saw this brilliant white light. It was as bright as the sun. I don't know what it was, but it scared us. We ran for blocks until we got home." "We really saw something that night," she said. Now let's go to Queen City in October of 1973. In mid to late October that same year, just days before the thousands of costumed kids were to hit the streets of Cincinnati and surrounding communities for Halloween night, Southwest Ohio was under invasion. an invasion that seemingly came from the heavens, and police and government officials at the time across the region were on edge, receiving phone call after phone call. The Cincinnati police told the Cincinnati Post their phones were ringing off the hook nightly about these strange bright lights in the sky. Cincinnati police said, quote, a mess of frightened callers saw something just above the treetops around Mount Washington and Bond Hill and 14th and Vine, and that some type of machine had landed on the railroad tracks near the 2500 block of Beekman Street. North of the city in Trenton, some of the townsfolk there swore they saw a flying craft of some sort, not from around these parts, they said, that landed on Main Street, right in the middle of town. The town of Reading kept going dark due to unbelievable power outages. Officials said they had all kinds of equipment failure. The United Press International reported hundreds of sightings over southwest Ohio. All of them were at nighttime. A woman, hysterical, screaming, cried to police something landed in her farm and killed 2 of her cows, she said. Back in central Ohio, a U.S. Army helicopter had been zapped in midair with a green beam of light. And according to the Cincinnati Enquirer, was also on the beat writing about this, said that a radiancy of lights, frights, and brights, as they called it in their headlines, were dancing, flashing, and hovering across the area, and that reports were fast as they were serious. In Greenfield, Ohio, police officer Sergeant Hugh, after chasing for several miles a circular white object with a yellow glow, was humming and flying just above the trees. He told the Post, "I've never believed in UFOs until tonight." Again, these are law enforcement officials and members of the military. Indeed, even the governor of Ohio, John Gilligan, had a close call with what he said was an amber-colored vertical beam of light. This is the governor. Shaken about it, he felt compelled to tell America during an emotional press conference that the UFO threat was real. He said, quote, "I saw one the other night. So help me, I am absolutely serious. I saw this," end quote. In Pascagoula, Mississippi, Charles Hickson never regretted the notoriety that came his way after he told authorities that he encountered an unidentified flying object and its occupants. He saw the aliens. 48 years ago, on the banks of the Pascagoula River, until his death in 2011, Hickson told his story to anyone who would listen. But Calvin Parker Jr., the other man who was with him at the time, didn't like to talk about it. He was there. He was present for one of the most high-profile UFO incidents in American history. Parker Jr. says that his encounter was with gray crab-clawed creatures that were from somewhere else. On October 11th, 1973, this incident turned his life upside down. He said, quote, "This is something I really didn't want to happen," Parker told the Associated Press as the 40th anniversary of the encounter approached. Parker was unnerved by the initial crush of attention, with reporters and UFO enthusiasts overrunning the Walker shipyard where he and Hickson worked at the time. Parker tried to dodge the spotlight for decades. The incident sparked a wave of UFO sightings nationwide and became one of the most widely examined cases on record, and skeptics ranged from the deputies who first interviewed the men to an author who sought to poke holes in the whole story. Parker himself had conflicting thoughts about whether he was visited by aliens or were they demons. Now, if you visit that site today in Pascagoula, you won't find any historical marker on the riverbank noting the serious encounter. There's no stores that are selling UFO souvenirs like they do out in Roswell, New Mexico. But local people remember, and when you ask them about it, they will talk about it. Parker was 18 at the time when he went fishing with Hickson on a tranquil Thursday night after work on the riverbank. The two said a UFO with blue lights swooped down, made a zipping noise. Hickson, who was 42 at the time, said 3 creatures with leathery gray skin and crab-like claws, he thought they were robots, had grabbed them by the forearms and levitated them aboard the aircraft. They said something that looked like a large floating eye appeared to examine them. Parker says he was conscious but totally paralyzed. He says they gave a thorough, and I mean thorough, examination to me, just like any doctor would, he said. And then they were back on the shore of the river where it all began. Hickson then reported needing 3 shots of liquor from a bottle in his car to calm his nerves before he reported what happened to the police. "Yeah, you think so? I'd probably need a whole bottle." Officers at the Jackson County Sheriff's Department initially suspected both men were just drunk, but they stuck to their story. And after that, Captain Glenn Ryder conducted a formal interview with the men. And then deputies did something interesting. They left Hickson and Parker in a room alone by themselves, but they put a hidden tape recorder in the room, hoping to catch them in a lie, making up their story. But it didn't turn out that way, because on the tape, Hickson is heard telling Parker, quote, "It scared me to death too, son. You can't get over it in a lifetime. Jesus Christ, have mercy." That's on the recorded tape. Captain Ryder said, "I don't know what happened to these men. I wasn't there with them, but I know you do not fake fear." And they were fearful. Overnight, Pascagoula became a magnet for news reporters and UFO investigators. In South Mississippi, hundreds of reports overwhelmed authorities and newspapers in the 2 weeks following the Hickson-Parker encounter. What do you think happened? Do you have any encounters you'd like to share? If you like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to watch this other video we just published on the mysterious black flash creature of Provincetown. Really fascinating story. Click right here to watch it now. We'll see you next time.